welcome to the session. And we are going to do something different today. I'm hoping we can be interactive. And in a way, I'm kind of starting from scratch here. So the question I'll throw and the challenge I'll give everybody is, let us for a moment have a blank mind on whatever conception, ideas we have about what the Hindu tradition or the Indian tradition has been about. And especially for people who are watching this, who are less familiar with the Indian tradition, I think this will be a very useful exercise. But for people who are more familiar with it, it might be even more useful because we have a lot of stereotypes. So we have a clear your mind, and with that clear mind, let us see if we can, if anybody wants to guess, what are the essential questions that interested ancient Indians, and why are they relevant to us today? And of course, there are a lot of questions, so I've picked three. For each of these questions, I want to ask ourselves, there is this whole context and background of, is the Hindu tradition, is the Indian tradition a religion? And I've been a very keen student of Bala Gangadhar's work and from Belgium, where he's talking about the notion that trying to use the category of religion to the Indian traditions creates nonsense. It doesn't really work. So for each of these questions, we can ask this question, what is the nature of this question? So I'll just go right out and say, there are three interesting questions that have grabbed our attention. And the first question is very simple, which is, who is asking the question? Who am I? Who is it that is in this mode of inquiry? And this is a very, very central question of the Indic tradition. Who am I? So, like we said, first we will ask about this. Is this a question of science or is this a question of religion? Where does this question, who am I, categorize into? Would you categorize this into a scientific question, or would you categorize this into a religious question? And my take on this is that if you take the Western categories of how they split up science and religion, it actually doesn't really fall into either one of them. If you look at science, it really has not asked who the observer is. It may be asking in a particular context, like Heisenberg says, in the uncertainty principle, that as soon as you have an external observer, that observation itself has some impact on the measurement of the particle, and therefore we can either measure the position or the velocity of the particle. So the question is that in the broader scheme of things, not just looking at the subatomic particle, is science really asking who is the observer? Who is the ultimate observer? Because science in some senses is reducing everything into what it can directly get through sensory input, through the five senses, or through instruments that also translate other things into the five senses. Right? So maybe you cannot see UV radiation through the five senses, but you can have an instrument that measures it, and that measurement will then be received by the five senses. So one or the other way, it is reduced to that senses. So it never really asks the question, who am I? Who is the observer? And neither does religion ask the question, because from religion point of view, God has given some commandments, God has given some tablets, and the assumption is already there. They're human beings that God is giving this to. And so that question of who am I is not really a question. It's not really an inquiry, other than what is the account that is received from this God. So that I would vouch is the first question that is a very central question for us, which is who am I? And I would also vouch that this is really an essential human question. Doesn't go into the category of science or religion, but if you have to do a first principle inquiry, an inquiry from first principles. So I'll give you a thought experiment. I remember thinking of this thought experiment when I just entered engineering, and I was in computers, and I was kind of grappling with this idea. Let us say right now, I take all of your senses and I connect the optical nerve to a computer. I connect the auditory nerve to a computer. I take each of those senses. I have a skin cover, so all of the skin sensory input is also coming from a computer, right? So I take all of the sensory inputs and I connect it to a computer. So at that moment, I can completely generate the world for you, right? I can make you see what I want you to see. I can make you hear what I want you to hear. I can make you have touch sensations the way I want the touch sensations. Now, this is the interesting question. How do we know that that is not the world we are in right now? How do we know that we are not in that computer simulation right now? What would be the starting point of knowing? And it's very interesting. The movie Matrix actually plays with this idea in some ways, right? So the only thing that where we can start that inquiry as a scientific inquiry, and I'm hearing here using the word scientific in a much broader sense than sort of the dimensions in how Western science looks at it. If I was a real, it was a real inquiry, I say that all of my senses can be somehow generated for me. Then what is left and who am I? And who is it that the one that asks this question? So that's where I'll kind of leave that. I would also have this favorite poem by Adi Shankara, which is the Nirvan Shatakam. And again, we are not really able to answer the question, who am I? But in the Nirvan Shatakam, we are able to say things like, शिवोहम शिवोहम, but then he says, एक एक चीज को वो लेकर कहते हैं कि मैं ये भी नहीं हूँ, मैं वेद भी नहीं हूँ, मैं जाति भी नहीं हूँ, मैं धर्म भी नहीं हूँ, मैं अपनी ये जो 5 इंद्रियां हैं वो भी नहीं हूँ. तो हर को वो नकार देते हैं कि ये सब मैं नहीं हूँ. इतना ही बोल सकते हैं कि ये तो नहीं हूँ. So we are only able to say that all of these things that are attributed to me, all these properties, all these labels, I'm a man, I'm a this, I'm a father, I'm a student, I'm a CEO, all these labels that are put on me. And he goes so far as to say, na vedo na mantra. So in any religious system, you would never be able to say na vedo the mantra in the sense of a holy book. One time I had a Christian evangelist on Twitter trying to evangelize to me, and he said, "Oh, we have a very simple way to moksha. You believe in Jesus, you're going to get moksha." So I said, "Wonderful. Have you gotten moksha?" So he says, "Yes." So I said, "Then you can throw away your Bible, because if you've reached the state of enlightenment, you don't need all this. So you'll be able to say, like Adi Shankara is saying, no na vedo na mantra." He didn't come back after that. So this is one of the interesting things that interesting central questions. There are very sterile debate that happen, about if you look at the debates that happen in the West, God exists, doesn't exist. I find that is a very, very silly question. Like, that is not even an interesting question to us. It's like saying, do pink elephants dance or don't dance? Like, who cares, right? This is not the question that engaged the Indian mind. Later on, people made categories and tried to map Nastic to atheist, all that, but it's not very interesting. Those are not the interesting debate. Interesting debate is, who am I? The second interesting question, since we have to move on this is, who am I? And then I start to say, okay, there is an experience here, and what is real? What is real about the experience? There's an experiencer and an experience. What is real? So that is another very central question, and you will see over and over again this notion of what is real keeps coming back in different forms of discourse. And this is true across the Indic traditions. So here it's not just Hindu tradition, Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh. All of these traditions are grappling in some way or the other with these questions. So what is real? So again, if we have a priori assume that sense perception is reality, which sort of 19th century science starts off with, but then when you get into 20th century science and you're going to get into quantum reality and all those things, and now you're getting into neuroscience where you realize that really everything that you're seeing is a construction. The brain is constructing this reality. So more and more this question, we are now returning to the fundamental Indic question, which is what is real, right? So how is this, again, now I'll come back to that question I'm going to ask for each one of these questions. What is real? Is this a religious question or is it a scientific question? Can you classify this into a religious question or a scientific question? What is real? So again, we have to go back to the drawing board. It doesn't really fit into either of those two paradigms, right? From a religious point of view, they've been given a text. You believe in the text, and what is said is there, and that is the end of the story. From a scientific question, science is kind of like going on this quest to unpeeling the layers of the onion. But because it lacks that center, that experience of the self, it is also somewhat lost in this question. And I'll give you an example. One of the points that, there are 2 points that the Indic tradition makes somewhat in a different way. So in the Western debate, it is, does God exist? Now, anybody who's an Indian who claims to be an atheist, I always tell them, first you have to become a Christian to become an atheist. Why is this? Because in the Indic tradition, we say everything that exists is Brahman. Ashtavakra Gita says everything that exists and which is beyond existence also is Brahman. All there is Brahman. Okay. So if you translate Brahman to God, how would you even formulate the question, does God exist? When I've made the statement that everything that exists is Brahman, right? So that question itself becomes meaningless. It has no, those questions are coming from a certain discourse that arises in the West. And it arises in Abrahamism, which has really very little relationship to us. You know, God exists, doesn't exist. It's like a silly question, right? So Brahman is all there is. This is what we are saying. And then the other thing that they're saying is, there's all kinds of like nuanced debate that is happening on the nature of reality. For instance, what is real? What is Satya? We go to that and we say anything which is impermanent, which means that anything that in the timeline has a for limited duration is not real, or is relatively not real compared to the Sat of Satchitananda. So what we are saying is that anything that exists in time, in that sense, becomes not real, and therefore the real cannot exist, right? Because as soon as there is existence, that existence happens in time, and therefore the real, as soon as it enters existence, this is a problem. So we've got both parts of this. Firstly, we are saying all that exists is Brahman. There is nothing else but Brahman. And at the same time, we are saying what is real cannot really come into existence. because then it would be in time and it would be temporal. Okay, so that's the second question. And now we'll do a third question, and this third question is again very relevant, and we'll ask the same question of it. Is it a religious question or a scientific question? And this question is, how can I be happy? How can I be happy? So, is this a scientific question or is this a religious question? Again, the Indic thought does not fit into either of these two categories. Today, you might say, well, this is a question of psychology. But again, psychology has a limited view of the nature of reality, Western psychology. So, how can I be happy? This is one of the essential questions. Who am I? What is real? How can I be happy? Right? If you look at what is religion, religion simply talks about getting into some kind of pleasure house they call heaven. हेवन जैसा कोठा जैसा लगता है, उसकी अगर डिस्क्रिप्शन सुनोगे तो अनलिमिटेड बूज एंड वुमेन, है ना? तो that kind of description, so we are already have a religious answer to this, that you are happy by quote believing in God, but what does that give you? It gives you this pleasure house, access to this pleasure house. So pleasure is the only understanding of happiness in that sense. In the Indic tradition, it's very interesting. We have this notion of prayas and shreyas. We recognize pleasure, and there's no notion of sin and non-sin. We recognize that there is pleasure, but we also recognize that this pleasure is temporary, that this pleasure is fleeting. And so once we have indulged in the pleasure, if we are wise, maybe without needing to indulge too much on it, and if we are less wise like me, maybe after some indulgence, we get to realizing that the pleasure that I'm obtaining is temporary. And then the second question arises, how can I have a more permanent state of happiness? And this is the other very, very essential question, which is the shreyas, from prayas to shreyas. Shreyas is that where the happiness can last for a long time. And prayas is that which gives me happiness now, but sorrow later maybe. And shreyas is that which gives me happiness that might actually give me discomfort now. Maybe I have to do sadhana, to do meditation, but it gives me happiness that is lasting for a long time. So again, how can I be happy? This is an essential human quest. In fact, I would say it's an essential to the fabric of the universe itself. Even an animal has a sense of being happy and comfortable. If it's an uncomfortable spot, it will move to find a more comfortable spot to sit on. Right? A cat will find this place to curl up because it's comfortable and happy. So this happiness is in the innate nature of things. This is why we say, Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Let there be happiness in all the lokas. All the lokas. And this is, all these lokas are intermixed. We are not saying let humans be happy, let humans have dominion over nature, let my tribe be happy, let my particular country be happy, let my particular people who belong to my religion be happy. No, we're saying loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. All the lokas. Let all the lokas be happy. And in one way you can look even this, these are the lokas. We have we have humans and animals and viruses that are now running riot, but we've been attacking viruses. We've been wiping them out with antibiotics and pesticides and all kinds of microorganisms. So that loka also has its own reaction, its own dynamic, and that loka in some senses is reacting now to everything that we've been subjecting it to. So loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. And then in a very personal level, how can I be happy? How can I be happy? The American slogan is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is actually not a very, it's quite aligned to Indic thought actually. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if you could actually understand it in the broader sense. So, in fact, I teach a program. My guru is Sri Ravi Shankar. I teach this program of the art of living. It's called the Happiness Program. So it's very interesting how Guruji named it that. He called it the Happiness Program because happiness is a very central quest and a very central question of the human existence. How can I be happy? So maybe shall we go ahead and experience some of the meditative states? So there are many different paths, of course. So then, once we have these questions, then the notion of panth arises. So for instance, we say something like all religions are equal, but that actually makes very little sense because for something to be equal, you must be able to define what is a subjective. Let us say there's a mountaintop and people are trying to get to the mountaintop, and there are many different paths to get to the mountaintop. Then we can make this thing that, for somebody's one path may be more suitable, somebody the other path may be more suitable. But we have the same mountaintop that we share that we are going to. If the destination itself is not the same, or the understanding, if it is not the same, that cannot be considered a panth. So, this quest for happiness is also a destination, and that is addressed in many different ways in the different happiness, liberation, enlightenment, moksha. These are kind of gradations of the same quest. Mumukshatva, the desire for happiness. So, shall we meditate? And then we can take questions after the meditation. Maybe some questions will disappear in the meditation. तो आराम से बैठ जाइए और अपनी आंखें बंद कर लीजिए. Find a comfortable position where you can be still for a short time. And I'll also turn off my video so you're not tempted to look at me. Just listen to my voice. So sitting easily and comfortably, आराम से बैठकर, become aware of the noises around you. अपने परिसर में जो भी आवाजें हैं, उनको अपनी चेतना में लाएं. कोई गाड़ी चल रही है दूर, कुछ लोगों की बातचीत हो रही है, कुछ खटपट हो रही है, घर की आवाज है, कुछ बाहर से आवाज आ रही है. Whatever be the noises, जैसी भी ध्वनियां हो, उन सबको स्वीकार करें. Just accept the noises as they are. They don't interest us at this moment. हमारी अभी उनमें रुचि नहीं है, लेकिन उनको चलने दीजिए. कोई उनसे राग द्वेष भी नहीं है. Taking a breath in and let go. एक लंबी गहरी सांस लें और छोड़ दें. Become aware of your body. अपने शरीर की ओर सजग हो जाएं. Your body is a precious gift from nature, from the divine. आपका शरीर भी प्रभु की एक देन है. मानव शरीर, मानव जन्म दुर्लभ है. ये हमें देन में मिला है, भेंट में मिला है। लव योर बॉडी डियरली। अपने शरीर की ओर स्नेह की दृष्टि से देखें। Become aware of your feet. पैरों की ओर सजग हो जाएं। Knees, घुटने, thighs, जंघा, genitals, कर्मेंद्रियां, stomach, पेट, abdomen and chest, छाती, become aware of your hands, हाथ, become aware of your arms, बाहें, become aware of your shoulders, मोढे, face, मुंह, top of your head, सर का ऊपरी भाग, become aware of your entire body, the entire body, पूरे शरीर की ओर सजग हो जाएं, पूरा शरीर, you are now in harmony with your body. आप अपने पूरे शरीर के संतुलन में हैं। एक लंबी गहरी सांस लें और छोड़ दें। Take a deep breath in and let go. Become aware of your thoughts. अपने विचारों की ओर सजग हो जाएं। Good thoughts or bad thoughts. Become aware of them. जैसे भी विचार हो, अच्छे बुरे, उनके प्रति सजग हो जाएं। जैसे एक नदी पर पत्ते बहते चले जा रहे हैं, आपके विचार भी आ रहे हैं और चल रहे हैं। लहरों की तरह उठते हैं और लुप्त हो जाते हैं। विचार क्या है, इसमें हमारी रुचि नहीं है और ना ही हम विचारों को रोकने की प्रयत्न कर रहे हैं। केवल एक सजगता। Do not try to stop the thoughts. Let them come. Become aware of your thoughts. The buzzing of thoughts. Chain of thoughts. Random thoughts just arising. अपने विचारों की ओर सजग हो जाएं। विचार चलते रहें। You are now in harmony with your thoughts. आप अपने विचारों के साथ समन्वय में हैं। एक लंबी गहरी सांस लें और छोड़ दें। Take a deep breath in and let go. Become aware of your feelings. अपने भाव के प्रति सजग हो जाएं। Whether pleasant or unpleasant, whatever be the feeling. भाव जैसा भी हो, सुखदायी अथवा दुखदायी, उसके प्रति सजग हो जाएं। Do not resist your feelings. Let them be there. जो भी भाव है, उसे रोकने या बदलने का प्रयत्न ना करें। जैसे है, वैसे ही उसे स्वीकार करें। उसके प्रति सजग हो जाएं। Accept your feelings as they are. Becoming aware of your feelings. You are now in harmony with your feelings. आप अपने भावों के साथ समन्वय में हैं। You are peace and joy. This is your nature. शांति और सुख आपका स्वभाव ही है। letting go of all effort, सब प्रयत्न छोड़कर अपने अपने आप में विराजें। शांति और सुख के अनुभव में, स्वभाव, letting go of all effort, repose in the self, and gently become aware of your feelings. अपने भाव की ओर सजग हो जाएं। Gently become aware of your thoughts, if any. अपने विचारों की ओर सजग हो जाएं। Become aware of your body and surroundings. अपने शरीर और वातावरण की ओर सजग हो जाएं। लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। And taking your own time, whenever you're ready, you may gently open your eyes. अपना समय लेते हुए, बिना किसी जल्दी के, आप आंखें खोल सकते हैं। नमस्कार। सब ध्यान में चले गए, कोई बात नहीं। तो अभी हमारा समय भी हो रहा है। तो अच्छा लगा आपको कुछ ये प्रश्न जो मैंने पूछे और हमारी संस्कृति के बारे में। So we talked about some key questions in the Hindu tradition, in the Indian tradition. These are questions of human existence. They are questions which are central to our nature. These are neither religious questions nor scientific questions, but they are a question of real inquiry, real scientific inquiry that goes beyond what what we are told, and real human quest, like the quest for happiness. So I can also invite you to, I'm teaching this Art of Living course for the very first time. They actually have an online Art of Living course, which I am teaching next week from April 17th through 19th. It's 2.5 hours each day. You can join on Zoom. And the link is grpr.in/HP for happiness program. grpr.in/HP, नहीं तो राहुल बाद में भेज भी देगा अगर किसी को इंटरेस्ट हो. Happiness program. In this we teach the Sudarshan Kriya. Right now you just got a very small taste of the meditative practice. We teach a process called the Sudarshan Kriya, which is extremely powerful. And for me, it was very, very helpful in terms of my own health and both emotional health as well as physical health. So then after I'd done it, after many years, then I started to learn how to teach it and become a teacher. So I really, really highly recommend it. And even if you're following some other practice, that is completely fine. This will enhance everything else you're doing. You don't have to leave your path, be on the path that you're on. But you can add this to your practice. And if you don't have a practice, I highly recommend having a practice, because we all are very concerned about Hinduism, about Hindu tradition, all this. But we have to really ask, what is our practice? Because from sadhana is where the understanding of the tradition arises. Otherwise, we are just talking about it. We actually don't know what the rishis are saying. So it's very, very important to be. It used to be said in the ancient tradition that if you don't have a guru, if you don't have a path, you are worse than being an orphan. जिसके पास गुरु नहीं है और पंथ नहीं है, वो अनाथ से उसकी बुरी हालत है. So that is a very important core part of our tradition. So highly, highly encourage you to do this. There's a question from Robin.
संक्रांत जी प्रणाम. मेरा प्रश्न केवल इतना था कि वर्षों से ध्यान करते हुए, योग करते हुए, क्या कभी ऐसी स्थिति भी आती है कि आप उस स्तर पर पहुंच जाते हैं कि आप सोचकर ध्यान नहीं कर रहे हैं, आप अपनी दिनचर्या में लगे हैं? और जैसे कि मैं भी कंप्यूटर साइंस के बैकग्राउंड से हूँ, तो हमारे यहाँ कहते हैं एक बैकग्राउंड थ्रेड होती है, जैसे बैकग्राउंड तो वो तो वो पीछे
होता है
चलता रहता
अनुभव. दोनों प्रकार की चीजें हैं. हमको दोनों प्रकार का ध्यान रखने की आवश्यकता है. एक क्या है कि जो आपका अनुभव होता है और जो आपकी वो जागृति होती है, वो थोड़ी थोड़ी निरंतर हो जाती है. यानी कि वो किस तरह से पता लगती है, जैसे कि आपका रिएक्टिविटी है, रिएक्शन टू अ सिचुएशन कम हो जाती है और रिएक्शन की जगह यू आर एबल टू रिस्पॉन्ड टू अ सिचुएशन. तो बटन नहीं दबता कि यार कुछ बोल दिया तो एकदम ऐसा हो गया, तो वो आप ना बटन प्रूफ हो जाते हो. लेकिन उसका हमको दूसरा पहलू भी ध्यान रखने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि बहुत आसान है कि कोई जैसे अब मैं आर्ट ऑफ लिविंग का कोर्स पढ़ा रहा हूँ या टीचर हूँ, कि अपने आप को समझ लेना कि मैं कोई बहुत ऊपर उठ गया हूँ या कोई कहीं पहुंच गया हूँ, वो भी एक ट्रैप है. है ना. तो दोनों चीजें साथ साथ चलती हैं. ये उसको स्वीकारना भी कि पथ पे रहने से इतना हर्ष उल्लास सुख का अनुभव मिल रहा है और वो अनुभूति निरंतर भी रहती है. लेकिन उसके साथ ये भी देखना कि हाँ, अभी भी मुझे गुस्सा आ सकता है, और गुस्सा आता है तो वो, बल्कि एक मेरे और गुरु थे, मैंने उनसे पूछा, योगी थे बहुत साल, बल्कि वो 90 साल के थे, पोलैंड से थे वो. मैं उनको सियाटल में मिला, उनसे मैंने पूछा था ये सवाल कि आपको गुस्सा आता है क्या? तो उन्होंने मुझे बोला कि मुझे आता है, लेकिन आपके और मेरे गुस्से में फर्क है. मैंने कहा क्या फर्क है? कह रहे जब आपका गुस्सा आता है तो आप उसको जैसे कि पत्थर पे लकीर होती है वैसी लकीर खींचते हो, और जो मेरा गुस्सा है वो ऐसा कि जैसे पानी पर लकीर खींचते हो वैसा है. जितने समय पानी पर लकीर रहती है उतने समय मेरा गुस्सा रहता है. तो अभी हम क्या कहते हैं, अभी हम छोड़ेंगे नहीं, ऐसे सोचते हैं, गुस्सा ऐसे करते हैं, मैं तेरे को जिंदगी भर माफ नहीं करूंगा. तो वो क्या हो गया, पत्थर पर लकीर हम खींच रहे हैं. तो पत्थर से लकीर खींचते हुए फिर वो मिट्टी में लकीर आ जाती है, रेत में लकीर आ जाती है, और फिर पानी पर लकीर हो जाती है, इस तरह से गुस्सा आता है। तो ये एक पूरा स्पेक्ट्रम है।
जी, बहुत ही ज्ञानवर्धक रहा। जैसे अभी कह रहे थे अनकॉन्शियस और कॉन्शियस मेडिटेशन में, इसकी अगर मैं एनालॉजी एक लेमन की तरह इसको ऐसे एनालॉजी करूं कि जब मैं बचपन में घड़ी देखता था तो मेरे को 5 से गुना करना, 8 देखना बहुत मुश्किल लगता था घड़ी पे टाइम, और अब मैं बिना कोई प्रयत्न करे मैं समय पढ़ लेता हूँ। मेडिटेशन में भी क्या ऐसी स्टेजेस आती है?
हाँ, मुझे लगता है कि कुछ अभ्यास का अंतर पड़ता है। जैसे कि ना योग सूत्र में बहुत मजेदार लिखा एक वाक्य है कि जो ये परिवर्तन आता है ये अभ्यास से आता है, और अभ्यास किस प्रकार का हो? अभ्यास दीर्घ समय तक बिना रुकावट के और पूरे लगन से, सिंसियर प्रैक्टिस विद फुल अटेंशन फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम। Patanjali doesn't say how long.
आज का जो ज्वलंत विषय है, क्या हम इससे अपनी बॉडी इम्यूनिटी भी मेडिटेशन से बढ़ा सकते हैं, और किस प्रकार से? यानी उसमें
हाँ
भी
जी,
अगर
बिल्कुल। एक बल्कि किसी ने मुझे फॉरवर्ड किया था, मुझे उस स्पेसिफिक उसका वो नहीं, कुछ वाइब्रेशनल लेवल एनालिसिस भी लोगों ने किया है, लेकिन जो स्पेसिफिक बहुत है मेडिटेशन, और खासकर जो सुदर्शन क्रिया है, सुदर्शन क्रिया का इम्यूनिटी पे बहुत असर है। और वो मैंने खुद भी अनुभव किया, क्योंकि मैं जब बचपन में, और बचपन में नहीं, काफी आयु तक भी मैं बहुत जल्दी मुझे बीमार पड़ जाता था, बहुत जल्दी मुझे जुकाम हो जाता था। और क्रिया के अब मेरे को लगभग 10-15 साल से कर रहा हूँ, तो उसमें बहुत अंतर आ गया। मैं इतना ज्यादा ट्रैवल करता हूँ और बहुत सारा एक्सपोजर होता है एरोप्लेन की हवा को, इसको, तो वो जो मेरे बीमार पड़ने की प्रक्रिया थी वो बहुत कम हो गई है पहले से। तो क्रिया में पहले मेरे को कुछ विश्वास भी नहीं होता था भी क्रिया से क्या होगा, क्यों फर्क पड़ेगा। किसी ने मेरे को बोला, एक स्टूडेंट थे, किसी का कैंसर रिमिशन हो गया क्रिया से, तो मैंने कहा नहीं नहीं, ये सब ऐसी लोग कहानियां बना रहे हैं, क्यों होगा। लेकिन बाद में मैंने पढ़ा कि आजकल कैंसर ट्रीटमेंट में एक ट्रीटमेंट है हाइपर ऑक्सीजनेशन। वो ऑक्सीजन टेंट्स में लोगों को डाल रहे हैं, और वो ऑक्सीजन टेंट्स में डालने से उनको वो रिमिशन हो रहा है। सो क्रिया इन सम सेंसेस इज, इट्स ऑफ कोर्स इट्स अ मोर सटल प्रोसेस आल्सो, लेकिन क्रिया क्योंकि ब्रेथ बेस्ड है, तो वो आपको सेलुलर लेवल पे वो बहुत आपको डोज दे रही है, वो प्राण की। ऑक्सीजन तो है ही, और प्राण की डोज दे रही है, और वो उस प्राण के रहने से ये कीटाणु उसको वहां पे रह नहीं सकते। तो एब्सोल्युटली इम्यूनिटी के लिए सुदर्शन क्रिया करना बहुत ही लाभकारक है।
जी जी, बहुत ही ज्ञानवर्धक रहा।
तो मेरे 2-3 सवाल एक्चुअली, तो मैं लेट हो गया था थोड़ा, तो स्टार्टिंग में जो आपने सवाल हिंदू ट्रेडिशन के लिए पूछे, तो मुझे कुछ आइडिया नहीं, तो अगर आप शेयर कर सकते हैं तो बहुत बढ़िया हो जाएगा।
हाँ, तो 3 सवाल थे, बहुत ही छोटे हैं, तो बहुत ही आराम से शेयर हो जाएंगे। Who am I? What is real? And how can I be happy?
ओके। Who am I तो एक बुक थी निसर्गदत्ता महाराज की, तो वो है मेरे पास। और दूसरा सवाल ये है कि जब भी मैंने तो विपासना मेडिटेशन किया है, तो जब भी मैं मेडिटेशन स्टार्टिंग में करता था, तो जो मेरा ईगो है वो बहुत, मतलब ऐसा लगता था कि मैं सबसे बड़ा हूँ, मतलब दूसरे लोगों को कुछ पता नहीं है, मुझे ही सब पता है। तो इसीलिए मैंने मेडिटेशन ही छोड़ दिया। तो उसका क्या उपाय दे सकते हैं आप?
नहीं, वो तो ना एक वो क्रिया प्रतिक्रिया वो चलती रहती है। जैसे कि मैंने आपको भी अभी उदाहरण दिया ना कि कुछ गुरु से मिला मुझे, अब गुरु ने मुझे इतनी भी आशीर्वाद दे दिया कि मैं और लोगों को सिखा पाऊं ये हैप्पीनेस प्रोग्राम, तो उसी में ईगो भी बढ़ सकता है कि देखो मैं टीचर बन गया हूं। ठीक है, और वो ईगो का बढ़ना भी स्वाभाविक है, और उसको देखना भी कि ये देखो ईगो बढ़ रहा है। तो जो अवेयरनेस है, जागरूकता है, उसका सबसे बड़ा एंटीडोट वही है। एक जागरूकता, और दूसरा सरलता, नेचुरलनेस, कि अपने आप अपनी ही कहानी को बढ़ा के, और वो अपने मन के अंदर ही जो हम बनाते रहते हैं ना, तो उससे हम अपने आप को पफ अप कर लेते हैं। जैसे तो dropping that story about ourselves and just being natural, being a normal person. It's not कि भी कोई बहुत तीर मार लिया है कि मैंने meditation कर ली. It is actually making me simpler and more simple and down to earth rather than becoming some high flown person, you know.
कुछ समय पहले संपदानंद मिश्र जी का एक वक्तव्य मैं देख रहा था, तो उसमें उन्होंने बताया कि कैसे संस्कृत के श्लोकों और मंत्रों के उच्चारण से भी आपके शरीर में जो है वो कई प्रकार की शक्तियां जागृत होती हैं. तो आपका जो अनुभव रहा है अभी तक ध्यान और योग में, क्या आपको भी ऐसा कोई अनुभव हुआ है?
जो मंत्र है ना, उनका उपयोग है, यानी कि मैं कोई मंत्र में कोई बहुत एक्सपर्ट नहीं हूँ, लेकिन जैसे जब गुरुजी कराते हैं मेडिटेशन या उनकी वो होते हैं, तो स्पेसिफिक मंत्र यूज करेंगे का प्रयोग होगा किसी चीज के लिए. तो मंत्र में शक्ति है, इसमें तो बिल्कुल संकोच नहीं है, कोई संदेह नहीं है कि मंत्र में बहुत शक्ति है और उसका प्रभाव पड़ता है, वो उसका अनुभव तो है. लेकिन उसके अंदर एक्सपर्टीज वो अलग बात है कि आपकी एक्सपर्टीज हो कि किस तरह से उसका प्रयोग कर पाए, वो सीखने की चीज. लेकिन अगर कोई ज्ञानी है, गुरु है जो मंत्र देते हैं, बिल्कुल प्रभाव होता है. और उसका अगर आप साइंटिफिकली भी सोचें तो बहुत ही सिंपल उसके एक्सप्लेनेशन है. हमको साइंस बोल रहा है आज कि हम वाइब्रेशन है, राइट? We are matter, but matter is also a dual nature, and we are a wave, and a wave is a vibration. So our nature is a vibration. So if somebody has the specific knowledge to introduce certain vibrations that can alter or make an impact on our vibrational qualities. So it is very simple to understand why the mantras would work. Now, of course, it takes somebody with very high knowledge to do that. है ना, जिसको समझ है मंत्र की, वो ही बता सकता है कि कौन सा उपयोग है.
मेरा क्वेश्चन था, जो तीसरा क्वेश्चन हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे थे रिगार्डिंग हैप्पीनेस. तो हैप्पीनेस को हम लोग कहाँ कंक्लूड करें? जो हम लोग अपने साथ भी, बेसिकली हम सब लोगों के साथ ही होता है कि हमारी कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग सेटिस्फाई है नेगेटिविटी में. मतलब चीजें जो जैसे आसपास है, कोई आर्ग्यू कर रहा है, तो हम जब तक सेटिस्फाई नहीं होते, जब तक उनको हम प्रॉपर आंसर ना कर दे, तो कहीं ना कहीं ईगो सेटिस्फेक्शन इज द अदर फॉर्म ऑफ द हैप्पीनेस. तो हाउ वी कैन मींस डिफरेंशिएट इन बिटवीन द रियल हैप्पीनेस एंड द फेक हैप्पीनेस?
जो श्रेयस और प्रेयस की बात की ना, उससे ये आता है सामने. क्या कहते हैं कि प्रेयस क्या है कि जो हमको थोड़े समय के लिए सुख देता है लेकिन बाद में दुखी करता है ना. हमने ईगो से आंसर कर दिया, लेकिन बाद में कोई हमारा मित्र था वो खो गया हमसे, या बाद में जो हमारा जो कोवर्कर था उससे हमको नेगेटिव फीडबैक मिली कि इनसे काम करने में मजा नहीं आता. तो जो प्रेयस है वो प्रेयस वैसा ही है. प्रेयस में है कि आपको क्षण भर के लिए खुशी मिलती है, देखो मैंने क्या जवाब दे दिया उसको, लेकिन उसका प्रभाव क्या हुआ उसके ऊपर, वो हमने तब नहीं सोचा. तो ये मेरे को श्रेयस और प्रेयस का बहुत ही सुंदर ये जो शब्द भी हैं, बहुत ही सुंदर लगते हैं इसको समझने में कि ये क्या अंतर है दोनों में. श्रेयस वो जो लंबे समय के लिए सुख देता है, शायद शुरू में कठिनाई भी हो, और प्रेयस वो जो क्षण भर के लिए सुख देता है, बाद में कठिनाई पैदा करता है.